Hello, you guys. Let's talk about simple interest. You can go ahead and cross out, and I'm going to do that right now. You can cross out compound interest because we're not going to do that. We're going to focus on simple interest. And I have this Party City logo here because the best way, the easiest way to remember the formula for simple interest is I party. I equals P times R times T. Now you have to understand what all the letters stand for. So the I is the interest, and that's the amount of money earned, like on a savings account. If you have a savings account in the bank, remember the bank gives you a little bit of money because they're happy that they get to use your money. Okay, the principal, the P, is the amount of money that you start with. And then the simple interest formula, I just wrote it again here. Now this is the annual interest rate, the R, the annual interest rate, is always a percent that they're going to give you. And then the T stands for time. Now here's the deal, the time must be in years. If they give it to you in months, you need to write it like a fraction, the number of months over 12. The only other thing we're going to run into is balance. The balance in your account is the principal, the money you started with, plus the interest that you earned. That would give you the balance. Okay, and here down at the bottom of the paper, the simple interest formula, your book gave it to you again. I equals P times R times T. And they told you the P is the principal, the R is the annual interest rate, and then the T is time. Now they tell you to write it as a decimal. I'm going to give you a choice. You can either write it as a decimal or a fraction, and I'll show you in the examples. Sometimes it's faster to change it into a fraction, sometimes it's faster to change it into a decimal, but you can pick whichever way you like. Okay, so take a look at example 1. A $2,000 bond earns 3% simple interest per year on its purchase price. Find the interest earned after 5 years. So let's always start with a formula. I equals P times R times T, and then substitute what you know. So we are trying to find the interest, the I, so leave it as I equals. The principal, the amount of money we started with was $2,000. The annual interest rate was 3%, and the amount of time was 5 years. So when it's years, just put it as a whole number. Now, I want you to notice something. See how the amount of money, the principal, ends in 2 zeros? Well, whenever that number ends in 2 zeros, I like to change everything to a fraction, not to a decimal. So I make 2,000 look like a fraction, 2,000 over 1. I make 3% look like a fraction, 3 over 100. And then I make 5 look like a fraction, 5 over 1. And notice why I did that. I can cross cancel the 100 and the 2,000. That becomes 20 and 1. And so then I just multiplied. 20 times 3 is 60, and 60 times 5 gives me 300. And 1 times 1 times 1 would just be 300 over 1, which is just $300 in interest after 5 years. Okay, take a look at example 2, finding an interest rate. So we deposit $900 into an account that earns simple annual interest. After 8 months, the balance in our account is $913.20. Find the annual interest rate. So this time we have to find the R. Now, I'm going to use our simple interest formula to find the R. I am not going to do it like the book shows you. So I think it's easier to do it this way. Here's the deal. The interest, I can figure out how much interest the bank paid me just by subtracting the balance from the, subtracting the original amount from the balance. So I have $913.20 minus $900. That left me with $13.20. That's the interest the bank paid me. So that's the I. So notice here, I have I equals P times R times T. So I know the interest they paid me was $13.20. I'm just going to make that 13.2 equals the principal. The money I started with was 900. Then I bring down the R because I don't know it. And the time was 8 months. So I'm going to write that as 8 over 12. Now I can reduce 8 over 12. I can divide the top and the bottom by 4. So that gives me 2/3. Now because 2/3 is a repeating decimal, 0.6 repeating, I'm going to do this as fractions. Keep everything simple. So I have 13.2 equals 900 over 1 times r over 1 times 2 over 3. And again, the reason I'm doing that, look at the 3 will go into 900 300 times. So I have 300 and the 3 crosses out to be a 1. So now I just have 13.2 equals, and then the 300 times 2 gave me 600, r. I bring down the r. So now I just circle the r, bring down the wall. I divide both sides by 600. And so when I did 13.2 divided by 600, I got 0.022. And you should show your work somewhere so you know that I did it right. And the 600s cancel, and I bring down the r. So now the r is a decimal right here, 0.022. But remember, I have to make it look like a percent. So grab that decimal point, move it 2 places to the right. So this tells you that the r, the annual interest rate, was 2.2%. All right, look at checkpoint number 1. A $1,200 bond earns 5% simple interest per year on its purchase price. Find the interest earned after 3 years. So I'm going to use I party. I equals P times R times T. And I don't know the interest, so I'm going to leave it as an I. The principal, the amount I started with was $1,200, so I substitute that in. The annual interest rate is 5%, so I put 5% in. And the time was 3 years. And since it's years, I'm just going to leave it as a whole number 3. All right, and now notice, see how the amount I started with was 1,200 and it ends in those 2 zeros? Anytime that happens, I do it like a fraction. So I make 1,200 look like a fraction, 1,200 over 1 times. I make the 5% look like a fraction, 5 over 100. And then I make the 3 look like a fraction, 3 over 1. And then I cross cancel, I simplify. So 100 goes into 1,200 12 times, so cross out those zeros. 100 goes into 101 times, so cross out the zeros and leave a 1. So 12 times 5 is 60. 60 times 3 gives me 180. 1 times 1 times 1 gives me 1 in the denominator. So 180 divided by 1 is just $180 simple interest. Okay, take a look at number 2. I equals, I don't know. The principal was 1,300. The annual interest rate was 4%, and the time was 4 years. So I use my formula. I plug in what I know. Again, notice, look at the principal, how it ends in 2 zeros. So I use the fraction method. So I'm going to have 1,300 over 1. The 4% becomes 4 over 100. The 4 years I just make look like 4 over 1. And then I cross cancel those zeros, get rid of them. So you have 13 times 4 times 4, that gave me 208. 1 times 1 times 1 gives me 1. So the interest earned was $208. Now number 3 is kind of interesting because look, they want us to find the time, the T. So, and again, notice how the balance was $1,116.50. The principal, what I started with, was $1,100. So if you look at the difference, that's going to be the interest that we earned. So that was $16.50 equals, the principal was the $1,100. The R, the annual interest rate, was 3%, and the T we don't know, so leave it like a T. Now again, notice the 1,100 ends in 2 zeros, so I'm going to use fractions to get rid of those zeros, okay? So I have 16.5 equals 1,100 over 1 times 3% is 3 over 100 times T. So cross out those zeros. Now 11 times 3 gave me 33. I brought down the T. So 16.5 equals 33T. So now use your red, circle the T, bring down the wall. Get rid of the 33 by dividing both sides by 33. When you do that, 16.5 divided by 33 just leaves you 0.5. And so we know the time is 0.5 years, or a half a year, or you could tell me 6 months. Okay, and since we cannot do compound interest without using a calculator, and you can't use a calculator, sorry you guys, just lightly cross that out.